Hello, class. I've had a few questions about study resources, so I'm going to do a quick video kind of walking through everything that's in Blackboard, um, which is a little bit relatively easy to find, and then I'm going to get into MATLAB. Some of that stuff, if you're not used to dealing with online things like MATLAB, it can be a little bit messier to find. So that's the purpose of today's video, just kind of walk you through, since you're on an online class and you don't have a lecture to attend, what can you do to get the information? So let's start in a lot. All right, so for every unit, down here towards the bottom, I'm going to have study resources for each unit. All right, and so in that, and above that is the proposed weekly schedule. Um, And so I've mentioned this a couple of times, but in case you haven't heard yet, this is the schedule that I'm doing for my Monday, Wednesday, Friday in-person class. And so the reason I posted this is one, it tells you the test dates. And we'll talk more. I'll have separate videos about tests, and we need to also talk about honor lock. That'll be next week. Um, but this is, if you want to know like how much you need to do each week to stay on track, go by this. So like today in my Wednesday class, we did 6.1 algebraic expressions. And so Friday, we're getting ready to talk about solving equations. So, that's if you want to stay on track with the class and be ready for the test, that's about where you need to be working on. Okay. All right, so you have the weekly schedule in there to kind of follow along with. And so for every unit, I'm going to have the study sources folder. And so in that study sources folder, the learning objectives. So that's like big picture, what are we talking about for this exam? So I break it down section by section. And so like the key ideas. So you have that ahead of time. The lecture note outlines, these are what I'm posting like in my in-person class. This is the lecture notes that we go through in class. And for my videos, I always give a little bit of an overview of the subject, and then I have a document camera, and so I open up like here's the end, in case you haven't watched the videos yet, here's like the lecture note outlines, and then I just go through and I don't do all the examples, but I do many of them. I definitely hit the highlights. And the one thing I try to do in these videos, and again, about like I think at least half of the people haven't even watched any of my videos yet. So um, what I do here is, MATLAB is good about skill practice. It's not so good about the concepts. So a lot of times in these videos, I'll also talk about like common mistakes to watch out for, just like how topics fit with each other. I definitely try to mention some of the more big picture sort of stuff that you're not going to get in MATLAB. The other advantage of watching my videos is I'm the one that's writing your tests. So yes, this information is out there, on the internet in all sorts of places. Um, but again, I'm the one writing your test, so the videos and how I work through the problems are probably going to give you a better indication what the tests are going to look like than just some random video on fractions or order of operations or whatever. Right. So speaking of those videos, and so like if you're following along my videos and you want the notes ahead of time, you come in here, print them off, and my instructor videos. This is my first semester with an online class in a while, so I'm kind of making them as I go. I'm trying to stay at least a week ahead of the class for those of you that are working ahead. And so right now I've got through multi-step equations, so there's only like two more videos for this unit before the test. And so every single one of these videos is here, but it'll send you to a YouTube link. And so for this first unit, since it's mostly review, for some of you, you don't need like the extra like lecture sort of stuff. You can get in there in MATLAB and kind of work and catch up on your own. But if there's any of these topics that you're kind of iffy on, treat these videos just like you were doing an in-person class and going to lecture. This is as close as you're going to get to what I'm doing for regular lectures. I'm going over the same material, and so I highly recommend you kind of get in the habit of watching these videos before you start the homework, particularly once we start getting into test 3 and test 4, test 2, 3, 4 material. A lot of that stuff I know several people have never seen before. And if you just kind of jump in and start doing the homework, you're not going to have the background. So these videos are here for a reason, because these are basically replacing a lecture that you would get in an in-person class. So there's the instructor videos. I also have linked to all the textbook videos. And when we get into MATLAB, I'll show you where to find those as well. But, so let's say it looks like I'm missing a couple here. So let's say that you are looking for order of operations videos. So if you go to that textbook link, this is, all the videos that the textbook has for that section 5.2. These are, from 2 minutes up to 10 minutes. So these are like shorter videos. But again, it's got the content. May not always do how we do things in class, but that's extra information you have available in all the textbook videos. If you're a PowerPoint person, I've got links to all the the PowerPoints that the book is providing. So same idea. It just makes it a little bit easier to find here. So in Blackboard for every single unit, you're going to have the lecture note outlines that I use in class and that I use for my videos. You're going to have links to my videos. You're going to have links to the textbook videos and to the textbook PowerPoints. So that's the main purpose I use Blackboard for this class, is to post those resources and do announcements. I've had a few of you asking about your Blackboard grade. I'll tell you right now that I don't use the grade book in Blackboard. This is first semester I've linked Blackboard in my MATLAB, so I don't have it set up yet so that I trust the grades. And to be honest, I've got a ton of projects this semester, and so getting this grade book in Blackboard up and running is kind of low on my priority list. So my suggestion is, until I tell you otherwise, ignore the grade book in Blackboard. And I don't have any qualm saying that because you have full access to your grades in my MATLAB. So that's what you have here in Blackboard, is you have a ton of information unit by unit, my videos, book videos, and so on. All right, so let's get into my MATLAB. So I've already got it opened up here. So since I talked about the gradebook right quick, let me go to that. So that gradebook tab is right below the student assignments tab that you're used to using. And so when you first open up the gradebook, right here in the upper left is your overall score. If you don't see that little circle, then right there in front, that arrow in front of the overall score, just click on that. That will tell you your grade. And so that, like if I'm doing a grade check, this is where I look. Now that calculation button, I like that, because what that does is it breaks it down by homework, quiz, and tests. And so for now, your grade is dominated by the homeworks that you're doing or not doing. And once we do that first test, that's going to dominate your grade until test 2. As we get deeper into the semester, your grade won't fluctuate as much because you have more points. But this is where, like, if you're trying for an A in the class, then that homework grade should be close to 100%. Your quizzes, whatever grade you're trying for in the class, that quiz grade should be that. So if you're trying for an A, this needs to be at least a 90. Trying for B, your quiz grade should be at least an 80, and so on. And if you're a little bit above in the homework and quizzes, then that means your test, you have a little bit of give and take. Tests are 60%, so which is kind of low for a math class. Usually it's closer to like 75, 80%. So I've got this set up where, the quizzes and the homework, quizzes are 15% of your grade, which means altogether your quizzes equal 1 test grade and your homework's 25%. Right? So if you're putting forth the effort in this class, I've weighted it to kind of reward you for that effort. But again, anytime you're looking for your grade in this class, come to MATLAB, look at the student grade book. Down here below, if you're trying to review for a quiz or a review for a test, looks like the default zone is past 2 weeks. You can go for the past month, the entire course to date. And if you want to review something, then just hit the review button. It'll take you in there. The other quick thing, and I've mentioned this before, I'll say it again, if you see a score of 0 pop up, that means that you did not start the assignment before the due date had passed. which means you're definitely behind on that assignment. So I put those zeros in there, sort of like a, like a heads up. Hey, you need to get in gear because you're a bit behind. That zero will not stay a zero unless you don't do the assignment. You'll be able to go in the homework and work on it as normal. But the quizzes, that zero takes up one of your 10 attempts. You still have 9 attempts and always take the highest. All right, so that's the other thing to watch for in the gradebook. Now back to study resources. There's a couple different places that you can get to the study resources. If you look at the eText contents, this, you would think that you might get the ebook here, but actually, well, I guess you can get the eText there. The main thing that I think people use the eText for is the videos. So, right now we're in chapter 5 and chapter 6. So if you click on chapter 5, then for every single section, there's a video presentation. And so these are the videos that I'd link to in Blackboard. Okay, so if you want to go back on fractions and watch something, click on video presentation. And then there's all their video fraction videos, okay, broken down by topic. The study plan, is really just like if you're looking for extra problems outside the homework that you want to work on that doesn't impact the homework because there's a topic you want to do more on. This is basically like for the physical textbook, this is like every single homework problem in the physical textbook. So if you're wanting like extra practice with converting between improper fractions and mixed numbers, you can go in there and work on problems and it won't impact your homework grade. All right, so that's the eText. That's the main thing that, like I said, that's the main place I find the video links. If you want the actual textbook or like the PowerPoints, down here a little bit lower, there's that video and resource library. And so when that pops up, choose chapter. So let's say that you're working a little bit ahead, and 6.2 is a big chapter for us. And so you do 6.2. And if you notice, well, you can select all. The main thing is the textbook, the videos, and the PowerPoints. Okay. I wouldn't worry about those test prep videos because their tests and my tests are not the same. So I'll have test prep videos that I'll post. I would recommend skipping those test prep videos. The individual topics are fine, but not so much the test prep. So once you pick like what you're interested in, hit Find Now. Scroll down a bit. And so multimedia textbook. So if you click on that, this is why you don't have to have the physical textbook, because you can get in the actual textbook. Now these are usually a little slow to load. But if you notice, there's chapter 6, 6.2. Okay. Now I know that we don't teach students to use math textbooks, and so this is something not a lot of students will use. But I think the best things about the textbook is it does stuff. The boxes for definitions and like steps of processes. Right? And again, it has video links. But like if you're looking for definitions, these blue boxes have definitions, and a lot of times they're like, if they're multi-step problems, they'll list the steps. So that's probably the most common thing that people use the textbook for, is definition style things. But again, there's also all sorts of examples in the book. So if you're looking for extra examples, you have that under the video and resource library. And again, there's all sorts of the videos that I've linked to multiple places and showed you, and you also get to the PowerPoints. So all of this is under the video and resource library. So this is part of why MathLab is expensive as it is because you do have the textbook and all this extra stuff to go along with it. The other place that you can get to this is in the assignment itself, in the homeworks, not the quizzes, because you don't have help aids in the quizzes. But let's say on the integers, I'm working on a problem, and I'm kind of stuck on what to do. And so on the Get More Help, now sometimes it'll have this listed out. Sometimes it just says Get More Help. There's always that View an Example. If you haven't been using those view examples, you're kind of missing out on sort of like people's favorite part of MATLAB. And then so, it'll walk you through, this one has 8 parts. It'll walk you through step by step how to do the problem. Now, sometimes these are helpful, sometimes they're not. Most of the times they are. Other times it's like they skip the step you need, or they just totally go down a path that may not be helpful. You never know until you actually see the example, but it's there for every single homework problem. The other thing is if you think you're doing the problem correctly and maybe putting the answer in wrong, if you go down to their answer in MATLAB in the example, your answer should look like their answer. So if you're like curious, do I need an improper fraction or a mixed number, things like that, look at their example answer, and then you'll know what your answer should look like. So that's the example. Now for the textbook, again, this is I think this is probably the most common way students get to the textbook. If you look up here in the middle where it says question 10, it says 5.2.37. What that means is chapter 5, section 2, and in the textbook, this would be number 37 in the homework. And so if you click on the textbook link, again, textbooks are a little slow to load. It takes you right to section 5.2 in the book. Okay, and then you'll be able to scroll through and, again, look for definitions, look for extra examples, whatever, there's a lot of information in the textbook, more than just like that one specific example. Access to a scientific calculator. And then my favorite is that Ask My Instructor. I've had several students use this already. So when you do that Ask My Instructor, it sends me a link directly to your problem. And so I can see your numbers. If you put in an answer, a lot of times I can work backwards and kind of figure out what's going on. But it would help me help you if you ask me a specific question. Like this part of the problem is where I'm getting stuck, or I'm not quite sure about this. Otherwise, I'm like, am I supposed to like teach the entire topic, or or what? So just if you're using the Ask Instructor, just help me help you by giving me some sort of specific question. Yeah. And yes, you can skip around. So if you like get stuck on a topic, like you can't figure out how to do it, even with the examples, and you sent me an email, rather than just sit around and wait for me to answer, then you can just skip to the next problem. Or as soon as you hit check answer, you are submitting your work. So you don't have to do everything all at once. And if there's like 1 or 2 problems in an assignment that you can't do at the moment, just skip them, go on to the next assignment, and then come back to them later. All right, so hopefully this helps. As always, if you have any questions about getting into the resources, shoot me an email. If you want to set up a tutoring session, shoot me an email. I can do Zoom, I can do in person. We'll try to find a time that works for both of us. So, all right. But since you're in an online class, it's on you to be gathering information, and so hopefully now this will help you find it if you hadn't seen it before. All right, I'm done.